Good evening and welcome. Let's start with the 4 great vows. Join palms and bow. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme buddhahood. Thank you for joining class today. So this is part 2 of the 2-part talk on compassion, and inspired by Ian and what he said about Maha Karuna, or great compassion. Such a juicy topic. So because some of you weren't here last week, I'm gonna do hopefully maybe like a 5-minute run through of some of the important highlights, and then we'll delve into today's section. So let me just share my screen. There it is. All right, so compassion begins with suffering. It begins with recognizing suffering and choosing to be present with suffering. And if you look at a lot of the, if you have a good look at your vexations, the chances are that vexations are going to be coming with your inability to be present with suffering. So compassion, is that turning towards suffering, which is what Avalokiteshvara, Guanyin Pusa, did, turning towards suffering. So mundane compassion, and Karuna is the Sanskrit word for compassion. And mundane compassion, starts with this understanding of, hey, first off, you're suffering. There's a recognition of suffering. And there's this understanding that it's human and it's natural to feel this pain. So there's this extending of understanding that this compassion is, it happens. This pain, it happens. And then there's, in that compassion, for it to be compassion and not just like empathy, there's this confidence that, hey, you're going to be okay. That there are many wholesome ways for you to be okay. And wholesome here is, it's conducive to your current and future peace of mind. It's non-addictive in the sense that it doesn't give rise to craving and clinging, which is in the wheel of samsara. So that's going into wise compassion. But even in a very mundane compassion, there is this, hey, I understand how you might have come to this point where you're suffering. And I'm confident that there are many ways for you to be okay. So it's that space that makes it not just empathy, but compassion. And underlying that, even in a mundane way, there's like you're okay and I'm okay. There's a trust in our inherent perfect nature that you're okay. That even as you're suffering, some part of you is okay. Some aspect of you is okay. So this understanding, this confidence, and this trust in your inherent okayness, it just creates some space for the suffering, and this is compassion. Wise compassion is, goes beyond this, in that the suffering of dukkha, the understanding of how the suffering might have come to be, that understanding has this element of understanding or recognizing pratitya samutpada, that this suffering has come to be through causes and conditions, that this suffering has dependently arisen. And then there are many wholesome ways for you to be okay. That confidence is in wise compassion. There's, it takes the form of upaya. Upaya is skillful means. There are many ways to lead you from this suffering. And then there is this trust in your inherent okayness, that you are, in spite of the suffering, you're okay. That takes this form of recognizing your Buddha nature, that you are your nature is the nature of Buddhas. So this is wise compassion. And what takes this wise compassion and makes it like humongously wise, immeasurably wise, is the recognition that the pratitya samutpada, that causes and conditions that led to this suffering, have as at its root beginningless ignorance, avidya. It's called nascent entrenchment, entrenched ignorance. That's where this suffering is coming from. And the upaya, the many wholesome ways that could lead from this suffering, actually lead to Buddhahood. Anuttara samyak sambodhi, unsurpassed, complete, perfect awakening. So this compassion is immeasurable, without boundaries, truly without boundaries. You could, sometimes when the practice of compassion is taught, you start off by, sending compassion to somebody who's easy to send compassion to, then a neutral person, and then somebody who's a little bit harder to send compassion to, and then, spatially, just around you, your city, the whole world, and so on. But this immeasurable compassion is already beyond that, in that there is the seeing the sentient being as simply a transition from beginningless ignorance to perfect Buddhahood. So this is kind of what we talked about last week. And we also, from here, we looked at transcendent compassion, where this is from the 8th, Prajnaparamita Sutra, Perfection of Wisdom, in 8,000 lines. Here, the sutra goes, but when the notion of suffering and beings leads him to think, the practitioner to think, suffering I shall remove, the wheel of the world I shall work. Beings are then imagined, a self is imagined. The practice of wisdom, the highest perfection, is lacking. So he's, this sutra is saying that, when you think that you're helping beings, when you think that there is something called suffering, and of course, between the lines here, when you think that there is something called compassion, then you're giving rise to concepts. You're imagining things. And at that point, when you're conceptualizing these things, the perfection of wisdom, prajnaparamita, is lacking. Okay, and the verse after that says, he wisely knows that all that lives is unproduced as he himself is. He knows that all that is no more exists than he or any beings. The unproduced and the produced are not distinguished. That is a practice of wisdom, the highest perfection. So this is like going from, you thought that there was suffering, you thought that there were sentient beings that needed to be helped. You thought, of course, that there's something called compassion. And all of that is a lot of conceptualization. In contrast to that, prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, is knowing that, there is no being, neither the practitioner nor the other being, there's nothing to be distinguished. There's nothing to be distinguished between the unproduced and the produced. Now, this is what we did last time, and this is the stage from which we go into Maha Karuna. So in Transcendent Compassion, here is how compassion can arise from this transcendent wisdom. So, so let me read something to you. I don't have it in a slide, I apologize, but let me read something to you here. And this is from the, this is from the Buddha Nature Treatise, Sally B. King's translation of it. That this Maha Karuna, this great compassion, right? This great compassion, the cultivation of this great compassion is like pure water, because a single taste nourishes all sentient beings in the world. So it's like this. You can think of it as this one medicine that cures all ills, and so there's this jumping off point from the 8,000 line Prajna Paramita Sutra that we just saw, where it's like, hey, there's no sentient beings, no suffering, no helping, therefore no compassion, and that is transcendent wisdom or Prajna Paramita, right? Then what is this Maha Karuna, right? What is this Maha Karuna? And in talking about this, the Buddha Nature Treatise says, I've got something here. Give me a moment. The essence of Maha Karuna. The essence of Maha Karuna is prajna. Prajna is wisdom. When prajna has two aspects: non-discriminating supreme wisdom and discriminating worldly wisdom. We take discriminating wisdom as the essence of Maha Karuna, because Maha Karuna is the condition of the uplifting of sentient beings. So what's going on here is that we just saw where the 8,000 line Prajna Paramita Sutra left off, which is like saying no compassion, no sentient beings, no suffering, all of that is conceptualization. And this is where the Buddha Nature Treatise is coming in and say, hey, by the way, prajna, wisdom, has two aspects, and both of them are prajna. And the two aspects are the non-discriminating supreme wisdom, which is what the 8,000 line sutra was talking about. There's no such thing called suffering. That's non-discriminating. And then there is this discriminating worldly wisdom. And Maha Karuna, the essence of it, is this discriminating wisdom, because Maha Karuna is the condition of the uplifting of sentient beings. So let's put this into the story that I shared last time, that Gilbert. It was an answer that Gilbert gave to a student in a university town. In a public lecture, this student came in and said, hey, something to the effect of, you're saying that, it's really all illusory. So then why should we even, if suffering is illusory, why help somebody, right? Why help somebody? So then, especially if that person is, what's the point of helping somebody? So then Gilbert said, well, hey, say you have a roommate and he was like, you're a student, you have a roommate, right? And she was like, yes. And he said, you say your roommate is sleeping and they are like thrashing about, it's very obvious that they are suffering. They are in a nightmare. It's like they're really suffering. Would you wake them up? And she was like, yeah, of course. And he was like, but it's just a nightmare. It's just a dream. They aren't really hurting. But and she was like, but my roommate's thinking that she is suffering. So that's what happens here with this discriminating wisdom, in that the bodhisattva recognizes that the other person is suffering, even though the suffering is illusory, even though the suffering is not really suffering. That suffering is there for the other person. The other person who's hurting thinks that it is real. So until they also realize that this suffering is illusory, the bodhisattva still has work to do. And the compassion that this bodhisattva feels is this discriminating wisdom and Maha Karuna. The discriminating wisdom that is the essence of Maha Karuna. The discriminating here means that it's discerning. It's discerning that even though there is no sentient being, there is still a conceptualization of sentient being, a conceptualization of suffering from the other side. And until that is dispelled, there is still this uplifting of sentient beings to be done. So that is what's going on with Maha Karuna. So in that way, Maha Karuna is so Maha Karuna here is in the ox herding pictures, if you will. So this whole like going in search of the ox and then finding the ox, and all the ox and the ox herder are empty, but then at the very end, the bodhisattva returns to the marketplace. So the Maha Karuna is what happens beyond the recognition of the emptiness of the helping being as well as the suffering being. There's a suffering being with an illusory being, with illusory suffering. And then there is this helping being who's also illusory. However, there is work to be done. And that is the bodhisattva returning to the marketplace after recognizing that the helper is illusory, the sufferer is illusory. And after recognizing both of this, there's still work to be done. And that work continues to be there until there's any being that is under the illusion that they are suffering. So that's Maha Karuna, if you will. And let me see one moment. So that's Maha Karuna. And there are some other aspects in how this Maha Karuna is different from just your worldly Karuna, or even the Karuna that is wise, but not as limitless and immeasurable and inconceivable as Maha Karuna actually is. That is the Maha Karuna is born out of Prajna Paramita. So that's a characteristic of Maha Karuna. And some of the things that are different is that, regular Karuna, if you will, the wise Karuna still has suffering. The suffering in that's what it is targeting. However, Maha Karuna is targeting ignorance. So even if there's a being that's not like hurting, as long as that being is not fully awakened, that all that being is that being is not even not even overtly suffering. That being's maybe like happy in a worldly sense, but as long as this being is is not awakened, then there is still Mahakaruna for that being. So that's one of the ways in which Mahakaruna is different from just wise Karuna, if you will. And another way in which it is different is that Mahakaruna it goes beyond just the heart mind of the practitioner, feeling this empathy towards this other being who's suffering, simply being present with suffering, including understanding the causes and conditions that have led to this suffering, and the fact that there are so many ways out of this suffering. It's not just that. It also includes upaya, or the activity that's the action that's taken to alleviate the suffering of sentient beings. So Mahakaruna is not just extending empathy and understanding. Even in the wisest of ways, it also includes compassionate activity. So, and another thing about this Mahakaruna is that it is not limited by time. That it is eternal. So these are some of the characteristics of Mahakaruna. And from this point, from the Buddha Nature Treatise, I want to jump into the Japanese Zen master. His name is Torei, Torei, and he lived in the 18th century. And he's written some wonderful words about great compassion, which is the English, which is English for Mahakaruna. That's just amazing. So I want to read that for you. And in last week in the lecture, Jake had this question about, hey, how about the 4 great vows? And he actually picks it up from the 4 great vows. So if the Buddha Nature Treatise is telling you, hey, this is what Mahakaruna is, right? So then Torei comes at it from the practitioner's perspective. So, in fact, there's another quote in the Buddha Nature Treatise that says that Mahakaruna is actually. Let me read that to you. The completion of realizing one's status as child of the Buddha is the Bodhisattva's Mahakaruna, because it profits others in endless engagements. Because thusness is limitless and sattvas are innumerable, the profiting activities of Mahakaruna are also limitless. So this is about the activity of the Bodhisattva, how the Bodhisattva, recognizing their own Buddha nature, is moved to help innumerable sentient beings, in recognizing their own Buddha nature. And let's see, there's one more quote I wanted to give you in that. This Mahakaruna comes from that Mahakaruna is actually the activity of complete Buddhahood. I'm not able to find that quote right now. But anyway, that Maha Karuna is the activity of complete Buddhahood. So the Buddha Nature treatise is presentation of Maha Karuna comes from the completed perspective, the completed so, of a bodhisattva. If it's a bodhisattva, it's a bodhisattva in the highest of bhumi, so most accomplished bodhisattva. But Tore, the Japanese master, comes at it from where we are at, in that we are practitioners, and how compassion can really, give your practice wings. I like to say that compassion is like Red Bull. It gives you wings. It gives your practice wings. So he comes at it from that perspective. And he says that, let me just find this place. So he says that, the correct course of cultivating practice is based on vows. And he says that the strength of vows is rooted in compassion. So, if you are looking to just benefit yourself, then the power of your practice is like so little. But if you want to benefit everyone, the power of your practice is immeasurable. So that's the power of great compassion. And he says, for this reason, the practice of the 4 universal vows first makes liberation of others the number one pledge, along with clarifying your own nature, cutting off the root of afflictions, studying all teachings, and carrying out the activities of bodhisattvas, so compassion and knowledge are completely fulfilled. This is called the way of Buddhas. And he infers from that great compassion is the foundation for actual attainment of Buddhahood. So this is how the 4 great vows actually reflect the working of great compassion. And from there, Tore goes and talks about, he describes great compassion in such beautiful ways. So let me read a little bit of it for you. Great compassion is like the sky because it covers all living beings. Great compassion is like the earth because it produces all the teachings. Great compassion makes it possible to see Buddha nature by first clarifying real knowledge for the sake of others. I'm going to read that to you again. Great compassion makes it possible to see Buddha nature by first clarifying real knowledge for the sake of others. That one line is how great compassion really fuels your practice. Because when you're practicing for the benefit of all beings, you are not going to stop with little wins, if you will. You're not going to stop with, I'm meditating, I have more peace of mind. You're not going to stop there. Okay, so great compassion makes it possible to see Buddha nature by first clarifying real knowledge for the sake of others. Great compassion makes it possible to pass through unyielding barriers by plumbing the profound teachings more and more for the sake of others. Great compassion makes it possible to penetrate the transcendental by seeking a life beyond for others. Great compassion can develop powerful application by striving on this path for the sake of others. Great compassion can activate intrepidness, which means fearlessness, by keeping a vigorous will alive for the sake of others. Great compassion makes it possible to get beyond a regression, like falling behind, like, making some progress in your practice and then falling behind. So great compassion makes it possible to get beyond regression because the mind is settled for the sake of others. Great compassion can produce broad learning by studying everything for the sake of others. Great compassion can produce erudition, which is also learning, by deep deduction of the principles of things for the sake of others. Great compassion can produce blessings by always coming up with expedients for others, that is, skillful means for others. Great compassion can annihilate afflictions by sacrificing body, life, and goods for others. Great compassion can extirpate conceit. Extirpate means like completely eradicate. Conceit. Conceit is like pride, and conceit is one of the last fetters that fall away before on the Shravaka path. And one of the last fetters that falls away before Arhant ship. So great compassion can extirpate conceit. Conceit is a common enemy, if you will. Conceit is this kind of a mild pride. It's not like the heavy pride. It's like pretty mild. It can even be like, hey, my path is better than your path, kind of a pride. Okay, so great compassion can extirpate or eliminate conceit by acting benevolently for others. Great compassion enables detachment from fame and profit by basing everything on truth for the sake of others. Great compassion enables entry into the realm of reality, just what things as what it is, because there is nowhere it does not go for the sake of others. The virtues of great compassion are infinite. They could be expounded upon forever without exhausting them. But it boils down to this: whoever has great compassion can extinguish all obstructions caused by past actions and can fulfill all virtues. No principle cannot be understood. No path cannot be practiced. No knowledge not attained. No virtue not developed. Just as when you want to win people's hearts, you first love their children. This is like saying, there's somebody you want to be friends with and they have their kid. It's, your child, praise their children a little bit. And then they want to, they want to be with, they are open to you, kind of a thing. So this is what Master Trea is saying. Just as when you want to win people's hearts, you first love their children. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas consider all living beings their children. So if you love all living beings equally, all the Buddhas will be moved to respond. So this is Zen Master Trea on great compassion. And so Zen Master Trea is coming at it from the other side or you can say from this side where, we are practicing. We are practicing beings. And he's saying, hey, great compassion, can really power your practice, because you will not be practicing just for yourself, right? Because when you're practicing for just yourself, you may be good with a little bit of peace of mind. But when you're practicing for everybody, then that's not enough. A little bit of reading of the Dharma that makes you feel okay, that's not enough. Because you want to plumb the depths of the teachings. You want to understand every principle because you want to help others understand. So that is great compassion. Great compassion can fuel your practice. So on the one hand, great compassion is the is a characteristic of Buddhahood. And it comes from prajna paramita, perfect wisdom, the discriminating worldly aspect of this perfect wisdom. And just a nice little, though the Buddha Nature Treatise doesn't talk about this, so an interesting aside is that this discriminating wisdom in the Tibetan tradition with the 5 wisdom Buddhas, that discriminating wisdom is a characteristic of Amitabha Buddha, who is the Buddha of compassion. So there's a link across these traditions. The Buddha Nature Treatise is a very much a Chan work. It's a Chinese treatise. So the discriminating wisdom is one of the 5 Buddha wisdoms. And the discriminating wisdom is a characteristic of Amitabha Buddha, who is the Buddha of compassion. And discriminating wisdom here is like just like there's with the non-discriminating wisdom, there's the sameness of all phenomena that is seen. With the discriminating wisdom, the multiplicity of all phenomena are seen. But in recognizing the sameness, so the non-discriminating wisdom does not deny the multiplicity. In the same way, the discriminating wisdom does not deny the sameness, if you will. So in that way, the discriminating wisdom and non-discriminating wisdom are both prajna paramita. And Maha Karuna, great compassion, stems from this, and in as much as it can be said that it stems from somewhere. It stems from the essence of it. I think that's a better way to put it. The essence of great compassion is this prajna paramita, the discriminating kind, because there's a discrimination that this sentient being is under an illusion of suffering. It is, even though suffering is recognized as an illusion, and this sentient being who thinks that they are separate from everything else, that they are a separate being, is not truly separate. But still, as long as that sentient being is under the illusion that they are somehow separate, that they're under the illusion that they're suffering, still there is work to be done. There is discrimination in the recognition of that work that needs to be done in helping the sentient being. And this is Maha Karuna. And along the way to Maha Karuna, the words of Master Trea, tell you how powerful it can be to practice for all beings. To not let your practice be confined somehow and limited by just practicing for this one being. So that's great compassion, and I want to read to you what Gilbert sent, because he couldn't make today's class. But compassion is, of course, such a wonderful topic. He wanted to make sure that. He just sent this to me, and I want to make sure that you hear this from Gilbert as well. Compassion comes from no place, dwells no place, and no one administers it. This is the most intimate and esoteric. Compassion is demonstrated by mind by use of expedient means, upaya. In samsara, it can be expressed and received by illusory sentient beings by the true nature of mind. This cannot be conceived of by sentient beings. As there is no suffering, compassion operates to alleviate suffering in expedient means as a function of awakening Buddhas. This compassion may operate to relieve suffering in samsara of mundane suffering, as well as part of the expedient means to remove ignorance and generate faith. So that was from Gilbert. And there's this, I think there's this dialogue in Forrest Gump. It says, like, somebody calls Forrest Gump when he's a kid stupid, and his mom said, well, just tell him stupid is as stupid does. So in today's lecture, context of today's lecture, Buddha is as Buddha does. So the activities of a Buddha is to make more Buddhas, not make out of thin cloth, but to expose more Buddhahood, if you will, that already exists, and that is the activity of Maha Karuna, of great compassion. So with that, let's hear from you on any comments and questions that you may have. Somebody other than Sam. How about that, Sam? Come on, say something. Hey, Frank.
Hey, Sentha.
Hey, good to see you.
Thank you. You too. So on the aspect of compassion and loving kindness, how would we direct those who have not directly realized this infinite, vast, unconditioned compassion?
Yeah. So that's where Master Trea comes in, and he says that, hey, the 4 great vows are all about compassion. When you say that I'm interested in helping other beings, that can be a small amount of interest, and it can grow from there.
Okay.
Yeah, it can grow from there. And what else? You said something else.
Well,
loving kindness. Okay, loving kindness. Hold on the loving kindness. In the Buddha Nature Treatise, it says that loving kindness comes from Maha Karuna. Basically, it is when seeing the suffering of beings, you wish for the happiness of beings. So that loving kindness comes from compassion.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anybody else? Sam? So Sam's been unlocked by Frank.
I made sure to at least give someone else the first chance, I was going to say. Thank you again, Sentha, for the lecture on compassion and Maha Karuna specifically. We greatly appreciate it. And also, Frank, it's very good to see you. But I believe at one point you were talking about a difference between like Karuna, which is worldly compassion, and then Maha Karuna is like world transcending compassion. I may be misquoting.
So actually, the Buddha Nature Treatise makes a distinction between Karuna, which is not necessarily worldly, beyond worldly, but still, you can think of it as the Karuna that is the Mahayana Karuna versus the Karuna that is the Shravakayana Karuna.
So could one say that this distinction is, or this discernment is, that Karuna belonging to the Sravakan path has more to do with like there's almost still a self-interest there in a sense?
Yeah, I am extremely uncomfortable putting down another tradition.
Oh, I didn't mean it in
no, I'm just saying this to you.
Absolutely.
However, the distinction is there can be karuna that is recognizing the suffering of other beings, and but the suffering that is recognized, there are three types of suffering. The three types of suffering are the suffering of suffering, which is like, this person is really hurting, and they know they're hurting, kind of a thing. And then there is a suffering of change, where just the fact that things are changing leads to suffering. So maybe there is like, oh, I'm happy right now, but who knows how long I'm going to be happy. There's this underlying suffering. And then there is there's the suffering of not being awakened. So the Buddha Nature Treatise says that the foundational vehicle, karuna, is only recognizing the suffering of suffering, which is like this person's hurting and they know they're hurting. Okay. And that there are several points of distinction. Let me highlight a couple for you, because that's one distinction. Another distinction is that so in that all three types of suffering are recognized as suffering by Maha Karuna, or great compassion. It targets not just suffering but also ignorance, because ignorance is the root of that last suffering, that is like, as long as you're not awakened, there's an element of suffering. So ignorance is the target, if you will, of Maha Karuna. So it's like Maha Karuna extends to all beings who are experiencing ignorance. Okay. And and then regular karuna may have as its target just the beings in the 6 realms, the human, animal, hungry ghost, hell realm, the Ashura, Titan realm, and the heaven realm. But Maha Karuna, extends to beings this is called the desire realm. These 6 realms together are called the desire realms. And then beyond desire realm, there's a realm, there's a form realm and a formless realm. It extends to those beings as well. So it's all beings everywhere. Okay.
Yes.
And and then Buddha Nature Treatise claims that regular karuna of the Shravaka path is only this I feel for you kind of a thing, with all of its, it's vaster than just empathy. But Maha Karuna, it includes compassionate activity. Okay. So I'm just going to say that this is what Buddha Nature Treatise says. And the way we should think about it, the way I would advise you to take this, is not take it as, oh, that's the Shravakayana compassion. Our compassion is better than that because we are the Mahayana people. It's like, is conceit.
Yeah, that would be wrong view. Absolutely.
Okay.
I like their values.
Don't take it like that. Instead, say that, at times our compassion, our practice of compassion may be very limited. Even if we are experiencing compassion, the compassion that we may be practicing may be limited. But in fact, there's an opportunity for compassion to be truly limitless, for it not to be extended only for beings who are openly and obviously hurting, that can be extended for beings beyond the ones that are in the desire realms, right? And that can seamlessly flow into compassionate activity. Okay, so that is the kind of compassion to practice.
Okay, may I just wanted to run one thing by you, because this lecture and this distinction between Karuna and Maha Karuna, and talking about the activity of this Maha Karuna. It made me think of recently I had the privilege to attend a retreat with Guoguang Fashi, and the like basis of her lectures was like worldly and world transcending paths. And when talking about right action, it reminded me of this distinction between Karuna and Maha Karuna. I just wanted to make sure I'm not making a false equivalent, but it's like right action in the worldly sense is like doing wholesome deeds for the sake of generating merit for yourself and for others. But the world transcending right action is action without the notion of a self. So it's just mind functioning. So when you were talking about this Maha Karuna's activity, that's kind of what was popping into my head.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's not just no sense of self, but also, so it's like it's a simultaneous recognition of no self of the other, the being who is recognized as suffering. So that being is not a self either. However, it is there's also there's the non-discriminatory and discriminatory wisdom. So there's the being who is hurting is not really a being, nor is there really suffering, but however there is still a being, and however there is still suffering. So there is a simultaneous recognition of both.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Hi, Sentha. This is Arvind, and thank you for the talk. And recently, I had an opportunity to listen to a Shaolin master, and I had a question for them, which was, how do they kind of balance the idea of practicing great compassion with training in skills that potentially manifest violence, and under what conditions do they think that it's rightful to kind of use any kind of violence against others? And her response was that they understand the consequences of using violence, even if it's to save a greater number of people from being harmed by a smaller number of people in any sense, and they understand what it means to affect their practice, etc. But I just wanted your thought on that as well. Like, when there are situations where there is a possibility that a harm coming to a greater number of people can be stopped by some use of force, how does one reconcile that in the context of practicing Maha Karuna?
So there's something that I want to first paint a picture of the ideal. So when in the Buddha's lifetime, there was a serial killer. His name was Angulimala, and he had killed 107 people. He had taken fingers from each of them and strung them into a mala, and he had it around his neck, and he was looking for the 108th when the Buddha came across him. And the Buddha did not even utter a word. Just his presence was so transformational that Angulimala quit killing. So that is something to aspire to, that may I, if in a situation where there is violence or potential for violence, may I have or exude a sense of presence that reminds people of their own nature, that violence may be averted. So that's an aspiration. And my practice being what it is, it may not quite hit that mark. And in that case, may I do the next best thing. And what that next best thing would really have to arise in that situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Tori.
Thank you so much, Sentha. That this is a wonderful talk, and I have been just thinking about my question from last time, and just, some thoughts came to me, and it's been difficult being a counselor, and there are people that I feel like I would just be stuck and I couldn't help. But then coming back from the teaching, right, that to not to get stuck, and seeing that the two, like you're talking about, the two sides, that there's no sentient beings, there's no compassion, there's no suffering, and to say, and then to see the other side, that the actual carrying it out to help the sentient beings and to relieve them from their suffering, and is to not to become stuck, and to be able to see that. So the more I think about it, the more I feel that even right now, I may not know the skillful means to actually to be able to help them carrying out from a more like the practitioner's standpoint. Then what I can do right now is to kind of sow that seed, and to be able to establish some kind of positive causes and conditions, perhaps for the future. Perhaps I'll be able to run into this person again, or this sentient being again, and maybe later I will have this skillful means to help this person. So that's just some of my thoughts.
That's wonderful. Yay. That is so awesome.
It ties into what you're talking about, the four great vows. And
yes,
as long as I keep, having my aim, using the vows to aim towards to deliver all sentient beings, it'll take me there. I don't have to worry about it. I just
that is exactly right. And that's exactly what Master Trea is saying, that great compassion, will make things happen where a little bit of compassion couldn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And in some situations, there's only the great compassion is the only alternative. When my son was like 6 or 7 years old, he was bullied in school, and he went through a really, really difficult time. And I wasn't at all certain that I could help him. It was so hard. At that time, I just started to learn all I could, practice, so that I could help kids in the future who are hurting like my son was hurting, kids and parents. So I made a vow at that time, a specific vow, that I will help kids, children, and parents. I made that vow. And I felt like that vow really carried me through that difficult time. And maybe my son benefited a little bit from that. But that was the only way I could move through that. Because if I thought that I have to help my son, I would not have made it because it was so hard. But I was like, okay, maybe not now, but someday. So maybe not my son. I mean, this is like maybe not my son, but somebody, some child, some parent. I'm committed, regardless of the timeline.
Yeah. Regardless of timeline, you said it very well. That's what I've been going through. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'm seeing something here on the text. Thank you very much for the comment and the feedback on the chat. Anybody else wants to say anything? Maybe you want to share something. Maybe it's just the topic of the lecture. Jake.
Yeah, thank you, Sentha. I asked Gilbert a few months ago, kind of like what the point of the Bodhisattva vows are, if we're thinking about like detaching from ourselves, but we have this notion of ourselves engaging in this task of liberating other beings. It felt sort of paradoxical, and I didn't really understand it. But I think that this lecture, Gilbert gave me a roundabout answer, and I've been thinking about it since then. And I think that this tied some things together for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jake. Hey, Suzanne.
There I am unmuted now.
Yeah.
Perfection is not a state of being. It is something to be strived for. And if that is at least partially true, then the four great vows help to guide our steps on that journey.
And it's only partly true because it is not something to be strived for as well.
In the samsaric world, the truth is strive. That is something we do as human beings.
Yeah. But
that's what I meant. That's all I meant.
I know what you meant, but I wouldn't be serving my function if I didn't also say,
of course,
that it's only partly true.
Of course.
Like you preface. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Let's join our palms. Bow. Thank you for coming to class today.